Her billionaire husband's stepmother sent her intimate photos with him and insulted her. She stayed silent, printed the photos, and hung them in the living room during the family gathering. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, today I bow my heart before you and lift every woman of this family into your holy hands. Cover her with strength when she feels tired, with peace when her heart is heavy, and with dignity that no hardship can ever steal. Bless the women who give silently, who endure quietly, who love deeply even when they are exhausted. Make their health strong, their minds calm, and their spirits unbreakable. Let no woman here ever feel small, forgotten, or alone, because she is the backbone of every home and the light of every family. My beautiful family, the respect we give to women is the measure of our humanity. When we honor women, we honor life itself. When we protect them, we protect our future. Please keep them in your prayers, in your words, and in your actions, always. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, right, I am with Mr. Peter. Stay with me. This family is built on love, faith, and respect, and together we rise. The human heart stops beating when you least expect it. Kira Walsh knew this truth better than most people. She had spent countless hours in operating rooms, her gloved hands working inside chest cavities, restarting hearts that had given up, coaxing life back into bodies that had begun surrendering to death. She understood the mechanics of cardiac failure, the way muscle tissue weakened, the precise moment when intervention meant the difference between survival and loss. What she had never understood until recently was how a different kind of heart could stop beating while still pumping blood through veins, how a woman could stand upright, smiling, breathing, functioning, while everything inside her that mattered had already begun dying. The emergency room had been chaos that evening. A construction accident had brought in multiple trauma cases, and Kira had scrubbed in for an emergency procedure that lasted hours. The patient was a young father whose heart had been compromised by internal bleeding, and Kira had worked with the focused intensity that made her one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the city. Her team moved around her like synchronized dancers, anticipating her needs, trusting her decisions, knowing that when Kira Walsh operated, patients survived. When she finally peeled off her surgical gloves and stepped out of the operating theater, exhaustion settled into her bones. Her colleague passed her in the hallway, offering a tired smile. "Beautiful work in there, Kira. That man is going home to his family because of you." She nodded, too drained for conversation, and headed toward the parking garage. The night air hit her face as she walked to her car, and for a moment, she allowed herself to feel the satisfaction of a life saved, a family kept whole, a future preserved. Then she drove home to the sprawling mansion she shared with her husband, and that brief moment of peace evaporated like morning fog under harsh sunlight. The circular driveway was filled with expensive cars. Light blazed from every window of the house. Music and laughter drifted through the open front door. Kira sat in her car for a long moment, still wearing her scrubs, her hair pulled back in the same tight bun she wore under surgical caps, her body screaming for sleep. Weston had not mentioned a party. She gathered her bag and walked through the front door into her own home, which had been transformed into something unrecognizable. Catering staff moved through rooms, carrying trays of champagne and elaborate appetizers. Guests in designer clothes clustered in conversation groups, their laughter sharp and bright. The dining room table, which Kira had set that morning with simple place settings for two, now held an elaborate dinner spread for dozens. "There she is!" Weston's voice boomed across the entrance hall. He moved toward her with the easy confidence of a man who had never questioned his place in any room. Tall, expensively dressed, with the kind of smile that opened doors and closed business deals, he placed a hand on Kira's lower back with practiced familiarity. "Everyone, This is my beautiful wife." The guests turned toward her, their gazes sweeping over her scrubs, her exhausted face, her work shoes. She saw the assessments happening behind polite smiles, saw them categorizing her, dismissing her, finding her lacking compared to the glossy women in cocktail dresses. "Kira works at the hospital," Weston continued, his tone bright and dismissive in equal measure. "She keeps busy there, but tonight she's here to look pretty for us." Laughter rippled through the group. Light, easy, thoughtless laughter. Kira forced her face into a smile that felt like it might crack her skin. A distinguished older man in an expensive suit stepped forward. "What kind of work do you do at the hospital, Mrs. Howard?" Before Kira could answer, Weston squeezed her waist. "Oh, she's being modest. She's a surgeon, very impressive, saves lives and all that. But let's not bore everyone with shop talk tonight. Darling, why don't you go change into something more appropriate? We're about to sit down for dinner." The words landed like small cuts, precise and deliberate. Kira looked at her husband, this man she had married believing he respected her work, her mind, her purpose. His smile never wavered. His hand on her waist felt like ownership, not affection. "Of course," she heard herself say, "I'll just be a moment." She moved through the crowded first floor toward the stairs, and that was when she saw Hannah Walsh. Weston's stepmother sat at the head of the dining table like a queen holding court. She wore a dress that probably cost more than most people earned in months, her perfectly styled hair catching the chandelier light, her manicured fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. Everything about Hannah radiated wealth, power, and absolute certainty of her place in the world. Hannah's eyes tracked Kira across the room. She smiled, slow and cold. "Kira, darling," Hannah called out, her voice carrying over the party noise. "How wonderful of you to join us. I was just telling everyone about the charity gala we're planning. Such an important event for the foundation." Kira paused at the base of the stairs. "I didn't realize we were hosting tonight." "Oh, it was spontaneous," Hannah said, waving one hand dismissively. "Weston and I decided this afternoon that we simply must gather some key donors. You don't mind, do you? I know how exhausting your little hospital shifts can be." Little hospital shifts. The words hung in the air like poison. Kira had just spent hours elbow deep in a man's chest cavity, her hands literally holding his heart, coaxing it back to rhythm, pulling him back from the edge of death. And this woman, this person who had never worked for anything in her life, called it a little shift. "Not at all," Kira said quietly. "I'll just change." She climbed the stairs to the bedroom, her legs heavy with more than physical exhaustion. Behind her, she heard the party resume, heard Hannah's voice rising above the others, describing her vision for the gala, her plans, her ideas. In the massive master bedroom, Kira stood before the mirror and barely recognized herself. When had she become this person, this woman who swallowed insults and smiled through dismissal? She had been a fighter once, a scholarship student who had clawed her way through medical school, a resident who had worked double shifts and proved herself in rooms full of men who assumed she did not belong, a surgeon who had earned every certification, every promotion, every ounce of respect through skill and dedication. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped fighting. She had believed that marriage to Weston would be a partnership, that his wealth and her work could coexist, that she could have both love and purpose. She changed into a simple black dress, the kind that would not draw attention, and returned downstairs. The dinner was interminable. Kira sat beside Weston, while Hannah dominated the conversation from the other end of the table. Course after course appeared, prepared by the catering staff in Kira's own kitchen. Wine flowed. Stories were told. Business connections were made. At one point, a woman across the table leaned toward Kira with apparent interest. "I heard you're a cardiac surgeon. That must be so fulfilling. I've always thought about medicine, the impact you must have on people's lives. Kira felt something warm in her chest, a small flicker of recognition. It is. Today I worked on a patient who... Oh, let's not get into the gory details during dinner, Hannah interrupted smoothly, her smile never faltering. I'm sure it's all very impressive, Kira, but people are trying to enjoy their meal. Perhaps we could discuss the gala instead. I was thinking we could have Kira help with decorations. She has a good eye for that sort of thing, don't you, dear? The woman who had asked turned back to Hannah, the moment of connection severed. Kira sat in silence, her hands folded in her lap, while the conversation moved on without her. She watched Hannah throughout the rest of the meal, watched the way Hannah touched Weston's arm when making a point, watched the way she leaned close to whisper in his ear, watched the way Weston's attention stayed fixed on his stepmother, his face animated, engaged, alive in a way it never was when he looked at Kira. Something cold and certain settled in Kira's stomach. She had felt this before, in operating rooms, when she first saw scans that revealed damage, when her trained eye caught the shadow that meant disease, the irregularity that meant failure. She was looking at damage now, at disease, at failure. She just had not yet decided what she was going to do about it. The party finally ended late in the night. Guests departed, kissing Hannah's cheeks, shaking Weston's hand, barely acknowledging Kira's presence. The catering staff cleaned and left. The house fell quiet. Weston came to bed smelling of expensive scotch and Hannah's perfume. He did not ask about Kira's surgery, did not thank her for tolerating the surprise party, did not seem to notice that she lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, her mind cataloguing everything she had seen that night with the same precision she used when examining hearts for weakness. "Hannah's brilliant, isn't she?" Weston murmured, half asleep. "The gala is going to be incredible. She has such vision." Kira said nothing. She waited until Weston's breathing evened into sleep, then rose and walked to the guest bedroom down the hall, closing the door quietly behind her. She stood at the window, looking out over the manicured grounds of this house that had never felt like home, and made herself a promise. She would not forget this night. She would not forget the dismissal, the casual cruelty, the way they had erased her in her own home. She would remember it all with perfect clarity, the way she remembered every detail of every surgery she had ever performed, because Kira Walsh knew something that Weston and Hannah had forgotten in their arrogance and certainty. She knew exactly where to cut to expose what was hidden beneath perfect surfaces, and when the time came, her hands would not shake. Chapter 2. The Photographs. Some truths arrive quietly, slipping under doors like shadows. Kira had worked a double shift, covering for a colleague whose daughter had fallen ill. The emergency room had been steady but manageable, the kind of organized chaos that felt almost meditative after years of practice. She had sutured lacerations, stabilized a patient in respiratory distress, consulted on a case involving potential cardiac complications. During a brief break between cases, she had stood outside the hospital watching the sky lighten and found herself thinking about an unusual patient from years ago, an older man who had come through the emergency room in critical heart failure, terrified and alone. She had operated for hours, saved his life, and he had been so grateful afterward, so insistent that she never tell his family how close he had come to death. She had promised to keep his confidence, and she had kept that promise, even though she barely remembered his name anymore. The memory felt strange, surfacing without reason, like her mind was trying to tell her something she had not yet consciously recognized. When she finally left the hospital, dawn was already threatening the eastern sky. The house was silent when she arrived home. Weston had left for a business trip the previous day, something about meetings with potential investors. He had kissed her cheek absently on his way out the door, his mind already elsewhere, and she had felt relieved rather than disappointed. She climbed the stairs to the guest wing, where she had been sleeping since the night of the surprise party. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, though she remembered closing it. Her exhaustion made her careless. She pushed it open without hesitation. The manila envelope lay on the floor just inside the threshold, as though someone had slid it underneath while she was gone. Her name was written across the front in handwriting she recognized immediately. Hannah's distinctive script, all sharp angles and deliberate loops. Kira picked up the envelope. It was heavier than expected, bulky with contents. She carried it to the small desk by the window and opened it with the same methodical care she used when reviewing patient charts. Photographs spilled out, glossy prints, professionally developed, the kind that cost money to produce. She spread them across the desk surface with steady hands. The first showed Hannah and Weston in an embrace that no stepmother and stepson should share. Hannah's dress was hiked up around her thighs. Weston's hands were tangled in her hair. The background was Hannah's bedroom, identifiable by the distinctive wallpaper Kira had seen during family visits. The second photograph showed them on a different occasion. Hannah wore a necklace Kira remembered her wearing to a foundation event last summer. Weston's shirt was unbuttoned. They were laughing, faces close together, intimate in a way that spoke of familiarity and frequency. More photographs followed, different rooms, different seasons, judging by the clothing and visible outdoor views through windows. Some appeared older, taken before Kira's marriage. Others were recent enough that she could place them within the past few months. She counted them methodically, a dozen in total, a comprehensive documentation of something that had clearly been happening for years. Beneath the photographs lay a handwritten note on Hannah's personal stationery. "You were always temporary. He's mine in ways you'll never be. A smart woman would leave quietly before everyone knows what a fool you've been. This is your only warning. Disappear with some dignity, or I'll make sure the entire city sees you for the charity case you are. You never belonged here. You're just a pretty face who got lucky. Now take the hint and go before I have to force you out." Kira read the note twice. Then she examined each photograph again, this time with clinical detachment, the way she would study medical imaging looking for pathology. She noted the backgrounds, the timestamps visible on some prints, the jewelry Hannah wore that matched pieces Kira had seen her display at public events. These were not moments of passion or forbidden attraction. They were evidence of ownership, of territory being marked and defended. Hannah had sent these photographs because she wanted Kira to know the truth, wanted her to understand that the marriage had been a performance, that Weston had never truly been hers, that Hannah controlled him in ways Kira never could. The cruelty was intentional, the timing was calculated. Hannah expected tears, confrontation, perhaps a quiet disappearance. She expected Kira to behave like the other women she had probably manipulated over the years. Kira felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. Not heartbreak, not even anger. Something closer to clarity. She gathered the photographs carefully, sliding them back into the envelope. Then she reached for her phone and made the first call. The private investigator answered on the second ring, his voice professional despite the early hour. "Ms. Walsh, how can I help you?" "I need comprehensive background checks," Kira said, her voice steady. "Financial records, business dealings, personal associations, everything you can find on Hannah Walsh and Weston Howard. I need to know who they really are." "Time frame?" "Start from the beginning. I want to see patterns, and look for something specific. Look for an older man, maybe in his late 60s now, who might have had a serious health crisis several years ago, someone connected to the Howard family." The investigator paused. "Can you be more specific?" "Not yet. Just flag anyone in their circle who has a history of heart problems. It might be relevant." She ended the call and made a second one, this time to a professional printing service she had researched weeks ago after the party, when something in her had already begun planning for possibilities. "I need photographs printed and framed," she told the owner. "Museum quality. Large format. I'll bring you the originals tomorrow. How many pieces? A dozen, and I need them matted and framed in a way that makes them look like important family portraits. Something elegant, something people would hang in their homes to celebrate memories. The owner's voice brightened with interest. I can absolutely do that. We have some beautiful frame options. When do you need them completed? I have time, Kira said. I want them perfect. Her third call went to a carpenter she had found through the hospital's maintenance staff, someone reliable and discreet. I need custom wall mounts installed in my living room, she explained. Gallery style, precise measurements, professional lighting. Can you come give me an estimate? Sure thing. When works for you? Tomorrow afternoon. The house will be empty. She ended the call and sat in the quiet guest room, watching the sun rise through the window. Somewhere in the main house, in the bedroom she had once shared with her husband, the bed remained